Well, hello and welcome. My name is Mark Epner. I'm a Chicago-based pilot with over half of my 2,000 plus hours in a Cirrus SR-22. Currently, I fly this 2011 normally aspirated G3, but also fly other aircraft when the opportunity presents itself. I love flying every bit as much as you do and look for ways to share that common bond through multiple paths, including this channel, as well as Simple Flight Radio, which you can find at simpleflight.net. My goal for the channel is to share my passion for aviation with others that share that same sentiment and do so with an eye towards proficiency, safety, and fun. Well, hello and welcome. At the risk of showing my age, I remember a saying from years ago that children make a good marriage better and a bad marriage worse. And when you think about it, it's easy to see why that's true. Children add a new layer of difficulty and stress to a relationship that's not easy to begin with. You've also heard me say many times that it's easy to be a good partner when everything is going great. It's when things go wrong the partnership is truly tested. Now, this is true of all partnerships, not just marriages. So welcome to part 3 of my journey, which started with a decision to move from my beloved 2011 Generation 3 SR-22 to a brand new 2025 Generation 7 Plus. In part 2, we discussed the financials, including the cost justification and how I sold my 1/3 share in the airplane. Today, we're going to talk about the new partnership, including the pitfalls to avoid and the importance of creating a culture and structure that can survive the stresses that comes with putting 4 adults together to own an expensive asset and to ensure each partner gets value from their investment. Like my children example, an airplane can make a good partnership better and a bad partnership worse. And I've seen an airplane ruin good friendships. It's a shame and unnecessary. Aviation is our escape from that nasty world out there, and being with flying buddies should be fun and educational. So what's the secret? Well, let's get into it. At a foundational level, the partners must be aligned in their values and missions. I've found trust to be the cornerstone of any good partnership, and trust flows from open and honest communication, a good dose of empathy, and sincere mutual respect. We all have to look out for each other and be willing to sacrifice for the greater good. As an example, in my recent partnership, one of the 3 of us was gone for 6 months of the year, the other was an infrequent flyer, and the third was me. I used the plane a lot and split my time between $100 hamburgers, practice and training flights, and then family visits primarily to Kansas City and Cedar Rapids. So when one of the partners wanted to fly, even if it was just pattern work and it conflicted with a family trip to Kansas City, I would ask about flexibility, but if that wasn't possible, I'd just rent another plane at retail because our culture is one of fairness and equality. There is no room to claim one mission of going to see family has more value than another, whatever it might be. In terms of our shared mission and values, we are aligned on keeping the plane looking and operating like new. As pilots, we are committed to being proficient, knowledgeable, and using good ADM. In other words, we want the plane and pilot to set the standard by which others measure themselves. Being aligned on our mission and values makes the daily operations easier because it all comes back to what we hold dear. All of these discussions and decisions have to happen prior to forming the partnership. That way you ensure the right people are brought into the team. So let's talk about those alignment items. First is the financial discussion. In my last and current partnership, we didn't want anyone to have a loan which had the airplane as collateral. So we required that everyone be in a position to write a check for the initial acquisition, sales tax, and a starter reserve fund. And regarding the ongoing funds necessary, we estimated fixed and variable costs, which led to a monthly required payment and a Hobbs hourly wet rate. Now, I know some of you use tack time or flight meter time, and you also use dry rates. I've done both and firmly believe Hobbs wet is less complex and easy to implement and track. In the end, it really doesn't matter when you use Hobbs or tack, wet or dry, because it's nothing more than a black box calculation to get to the result you want. You can make any method work for you. By the way, there are multiple pilots that don't believe me when I tell them the rates we charge ourselves today are the exact same rates we set back in September of 2016. And we've only had to add funds once for a new engine, which wasn't a big hit for us. And in keeping with our Keep It Simple operating process, we all have a debit card attached to our bank account. So when we buy fuel, we use the card. Sure, it means everyone contributes to every gallon purchased, whether they fly or not, but it works and requires no extra management. Similarly, when we purchase any items for the plane, whether it's a quart of oil, cleaning supplies, or maybe even a new audio panel, we use the debit card. Now, for the more significant expenditures, we do a vote and majority rules. Although I have to say there have been multiple instances in which a single partner requests an expenditure and maybe the other partners really don't want it, but in the spirit of being empathetic and a good partner, we allow the expense. For example, because of our proximity to Lake Michigan and the prevailing westerly winds that would push our Cirrus out over the lake if I deployed the parachute, for example, I requested life preservers. Now, the partnership could say no, and then I just go out and buy one myself. But as usual, the partnership sees value in having those items in the plane. So bottom line, we all recognize this is an expensive addiction, and all partners need to come in with a what's best for the partnership attitude and pay their fair share. One more critical item on the financial side is insurance. All partners need to be insurable. Recognize the insurance company may have minimum pilot requirements. And if one partner doesn't fit, it may cause a premium increase, which is either covered by that pilot or the partnership decides to split the increase. Or maybe that person is just not right for the partnership. Tough decisions have to be made. Some insurance companies might have a hull value limitation that limits whether everyone in the airplane are appropriate. Or they may have constraints if pilots are over 70. The partners also have to be aligned on what the coverage is. Does one person want 1 million smooth and another want 2 million with 250K seat limits? Determining and obtaining the proper insurance is an early required decision for the team. You got to make sure everyone is aligned and insurable. The next factor is mission-based. If one partner wants the plane every weekend to travel to their lake house and another partner wants the plane every other weekend, then we can easily see the partnership is just not going to work. But if the pilots find an acceptable solution, then that's a step in the right direction. But let's say the weather always sucks for one partner, requiring canceling their travel. I tell you what, I've seen it, hard feelings will start to arise. Which also brings up the ratings of the partners. If a partner can't make his trips because he doesn't have an instrument rating, then that's not anyone else's fault. So it's not a bad idea to have all partners either understand and accept the limitations or require everyone to have an instrument rating and to be current and proficient. I love our partnership because we all bring a personal pride to be knowledgeable, proficient, and experienced. By the way, if you have a partner and you feel that partner lacks stick and rudder or ADM skills, then it's probably best to find another partner. Okay, let's move on and talk maintenance. Of course, all airworthy items must be fixed ASAP. But sometimes there are other items that are optional but important to the partnership. Those expenditures should be discussed but not argued. Our annuals come back with a discrepancy list that's generally pretty large. Yet I cannot remember any year in which the partners had an argument about which to repair and which to defer. Maybe it's an optional item like crazed lens cover on a recognition light, or a weathered bolster panel, or a wing walk that might need replacement. Or it could be a big item like a preemptive replacement of a starter. We always agree on whether to move forward or defer, which also speaks to our alignment on keeping the plane looking new and in tip-top shape. There is a shared pride of ownership that makes decisions relatively easy. Now, owning a plane is a labor of love. The workload can be overwhelming but rewarding, especially for a sole owner. That's the great thing about partnerships. There's an opportunity to divide up the work. For example, if there are 3 partners, have someone take the lead on the financials. That means developing a relationship with the bank, opening the account, getting debit cards for the partners, paying bills, invoicing partners, filling out any federal or state paperwork, and so on and so forth. Another partner can lead the maintenance side of the business, scheduling service, tracking due dates for annuals and oil changes, and developing relationships with maintenance shops. And last is operations, and that's been my role, and I absolutely love it. It includes ensuring the plane looks good. To accomplish that, I include cleaning supplies in the back of the plane, along with a couple quarts of oil, sunshades, oxygen masks, and so on and so forth. Also keeping the databases up to date and helping the partners get more out of the airplane by educating them on tips and tricks and best practices. Or if a new item is added, making sure the team is aware and ready to use it. For example, when we replaced our Garmin 347 audio panel with the Garmin 350C, I was accountable for bringing everyone up to speed on all the new features that were available and how to access them. In our case, we happen to have a fourth partner who also happens to be a CFI. His responsibility is to ensure that he provides dual for all of our needs, whether it's an IPC, a flight review, keeping current, or just extra training we feel we need for emergency procedures or whatever. It's a tremendous asset to have, and we're so excited to have him part of the family. Keeping everyone operating at a high level contributes to making us appropriately confident pilots. That's one of the missions of the partnership. Next comes the rules the partnership lives by. How should the plane be flown? For example, lean of peak or rich of peak. Limitations in the case of percent power. How to lean and to what temperatures. On overnights, we require the plane to be hangared at the pilot's expense. And if a hangar is not available, the pilot should seek approval to waive that requirement for that night or weekend. How to hot start and cold start the plane. How to secure the plane. Again, for example, I was once taught to leave the flaps at 50% when securing the plane. So when you came back to the plane, no one would step on the flaps when getting in or out of the airplane. A plane like the Cirrus G3 or newer has a very narrow wing walk coming off the step, so it's easy for a passenger to mistakenly step on that no step label on the flaps. Rules should also include which airports should be avoided due to poor runway surfaces, etc. And then there is a required cleanup after the flight, including placing a sun shield for some or all of the cockpit windows, cleaning the leading edges, and cleaning the windshield. And last but not least, ensure you have a partnership agreement that specifically states how long the initial term of the partnership will be in place, how decisions will be made, how to handle voluntary and involuntary termination of a partner, how to sell the plane or a share of the plane. Now, if you agree to all these items when the partnership is getting kicked off, you'll find it a much more collaborative and friendly environment, which will help to avoid problems now and in the future. So I've talked a lot, we've been through a lot of topics, and yet I've only scratched the surface of the complexity of establishing, building, and maintaining a positive and productive partnership. There will be disagreements and possibly angry disagreements, but that's just like any partnership between humans. Rather, you need to look at it as an opportunity to strengthen the partnership. In my previous partnership, I flew a lot with one of my partners. Now it's about a decade later. And we've built on all of our interactions, and now he is one of my closest friends, and when we look at each other, we both have become safer and better pilots. It's a beautiful thing. Let me know if you have any questions or if you have a different view of any of the topics we've discussed today. We certainly can learn from each other. And before I sign off, I want to provide you a quick update as to our progress in moving forward with the new plane. In mid-September, she received her certificate of airworthiness, which of course triggered our contract and the resulting payment. Ouch. Further, as agreed, we are leasing it back to Cirrus for the first 4 months, which will get her off on the right foot. The problem is now I've sold my share, I'm planeless, so I'm going through a bit of withdrawal. Now, we did arrange to spend some time on a G7 with an external power unit to get comfortable with the G3000 avionics. That was cool, but it only fueled my desire for the next flight. So just yesterday, I went up with a CFI to get some time behind the side stick of a G7. And let me just tell you, it was great. Now I'm really excited. I'm glad to be on this journey and glad you've decided to join me as I head down this path. So until next time, blue skies and tailwinds.